Well, this week's New Thinking by Richard Rennie highlights a New Zealand Trade and Enterprise webinar held recently showing some similarities between the Irish and New Zealand dairying systems, facing some of the similar problems and opportunities. Now, any image of a quaint Irish dairy sector with some rustic replica is certainly what New Zealand's main industry once needed to be discarded after the rapid advancements made by that country's farmers in recent years. Now, following the removal of the Common Agricultural Policy quotas in 2015, it signalled a new dawn for Ireland's 18,000 dairy farmers. And to join us to discuss this from a very cold and chilly London is Alex Gowen from the Agribusiness Sector Lead from New Zealand Trade Enterprise. Alex, thank you so much for joining us in your late evening there to talk around the opportunities that beckon in Ireland with the dairy growth ahead. Can you talk about some of the grass growing similarities between the two countries?
So New Zealand and Ireland are very similar in terms of their ability to grow grass and that pastoral element within dairy farming. And that's a really valuable resource that's both similar in New Zealand and Ireland. Since 2015 and the release of the Irish dairying to produce more has really opened up that opportunity to produce milk in a very cost-effective way. In a competitive way. And that in part has been enabled through investment and different technological advancements and investments.
Can you explain more about what the Common Agricultural Policy quotas were and what the removal of them does for the dairy sector in Ireland?
So this is not a particular area of specialism for me, but essentially the way to understand it is there was a cap essentially on production. And now Irish dairy farming can produce as much as they want and align to market forces and demand from the market.
And so therefore there is some strong links between New Zealand and Ireland's dairy sector that I'm aware of, but what are some of those that exist that can be built on to have competitive market advantages for both countries?
I can't really talk to that, but what I can say is there's a lot of collaboration that's ongoing at the moment in terms of shared values, and this is seen through perhaps the environmental challenge that comes with increased farm production in that regard. What we're also seeing is some really great examples where companies such as LIC are adding to the genetic base in Ireland and helping local dairying there really succeed, and Waikato milking systems by way of creating efficiencies in the parlour. So I think that's the real basis of collaboration there and shared practice and understanding.
Alex, you said in the webinar that to measure and manage productivity per cow and the environmental challenges with data capture and management are also big areas of opportunity.
Yes, so a fantastic example, a company that you may be familiar with is Figured, and they produce farm accountancy software that's really quite cutting edge and well received by many farmers. Now, Figured have gone to market in Ireland as a New Zealand company and taking that experience in developing that software they've enabled essentially Irish farming to better understand their accounts and the way they manage their farm to be more profitable. So that's a fantastic example of where data and understanding the information around your farm can lead to better manage, because if you can't measure what's happening, it's an impossible thing to manage.
When it talks to in terms of the Irish dairying system, a large farm is simply only 200 cows. How are they able to produce economies of scale to make sure that their dairy farming operations are profitable?
So I think this comes back to producing relative to what the market's paying. If you're aligned to your markets, whether that be the supermarket or processor, and you work back from that and say, well, if I can build a profitable business around that market reality, then they can do that at this stage. Many farmers are looking at expanding past that, and you're seeing, larger herds. And again, that's why, we've seen increased investment in, say, rotary parlours to help, deal with that increased capacity. But again, it's really aligning to what the market's asking for.
Mm. And how important is interconnected countries' collaboration around common challenges in your particular role with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise?
So we see it, a really good example is around cross-seasonality. So Ireland is operating in the Northern Hemisphere and obviously New Zealand in the Southern Hemisphere. In terms of farm research, that's quite useful because you see research, the likes of, say, Moore Park and Chagas, the extension bodies in New Zealand, being able to cross-collaborate with some of the extension activities in the Southern Hemisphere. So that's really good. In terms of business, with farming and farm supplies and the ancillary industries around it, you see peaks and troughs around demand in certain products and services. So by operating in both Northern and Southern Hemisphere, you get to smooth out some of that market demand. So that's another real area of collaboration and opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining us. And as I said, your late, chilly London evening there, working in your role with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. And of course, you can read more on farmersweekly.co.nz. The new thinking piece, Opportunities Beckon in Ireland with Dairy Growth.